Now, back to the theme of saying the quiet part out loud. Jim Chalmers, of course, the State Charmer, the Treasurer, the man who is going to be having the three-day talk fest, where the final item on the final day is the only thing really anyone cares about, which is the changes potentially to a tax system. You've heard from the union bosses and what they have demanded, which is huge changes, particularly to negative gearing and a whole bunch of other taxes that would raise more money than any of the taxes that were being suggested and rejected by the Australian people by Bill Shorten back in 2019. It means the Productivity Summit is now getting a new name, and this is a smart one from Tim Wilson. Everyone else in the opposition, pick up this line and run with it, please.
So far, all we've had is proposals for tax hikes. It's a tax hike summit from Treasurer Jim Chalmers. Initially it was a productivity one. It's now ended up being a tax hike summit. The unions have very clearly outlined their agenda.
And doing his bit in his new job as the Assistant Treasurer, Dan Molino, an MP from Victoria, was here on Sky News discussing this very issue today. And he's playing the game of I'm not going to rule anything in, I'm not going to rule anything out, which means when suggestions are put on the table about the GST, that they remain potentially active until they're either endorsed or killed off. Here's what he had to say, and pay attention to one word that starts with E towards the end of his comments.
And what the Treasurer has said from the outset is that he doesn't want to get into the rule-in, rule-out game because that would undermine the whole purpose of this process. And so he's open to a range of ideas being brought to the round table. It's also important to consider, when you look at a range of taxes, the equity of different taxes and also the administrative simplicity of different taxes and their fiscal implications. That's what makes tax reform complex, but you can't just look at that one characteristic of taxes in isolation.
Now, I'm hardly somebody who polices grammar. I'm not somebody who speaks the King's English, and don't get me to spell half of the words that I've just said to you tonight. But there is a grand difference between the concept of equality, one that we have all been very aware of for decades and decades, and the new prominence on the word equity. The word equity is different than the word equality, because equity means, regardless of your effort, we all end up in the same place. Or as Kamala Harris explains it,
it's about giving people the resources and the support they need so that everyone can be on equal footing and then compete on equal footing. Equitable treatment means we all end up at the same place.
You know, how did that work out? Of course, they won one and then they lost one big. There is a big difference between those two words. Pay attention when they are said because they mean very different things. Now, to our mates in Tasmania. I'm looking forward to being in Tassie sooner rather than later. We've got an Our Town coming up there in just a few weeks' time. But, of course, we care about Tasmania because it's a beautiful part of Australia. It's part of the family. And while I may well have wanted to talk an awful lot about Tasmanian state politics, I am aware it doesn't play that hot around the country. As you know, they have had an election, and guess what? Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. That's, of course, the Senate, not the Tasmanian Parliament. But anyway, here we go. So after the election, which was only brought on because the Labor Party basically tried to steal government, Jeremy Ratcliffe did an incredible job of being able to hold on to as many seats as he had going into the state election. And he is in the box seat to be the, returned Premier. But he only got 14 seats, which means he is 4 short of what you would need to control the Parliament. Dean Winter, who actually got a lower vote than some other candidates in his own electorate under the Hare-Clark system, had Labor with just 10 seats. They are 8 short of being able to become the government. But because of the Greens, that's an extra 5, because the former Lambie MPs have now been replaced with largely left-wing independents. There is a way that he could stitch his way towards 18 votes. But there could be quite a bit of mess between now and then. In fact, today was the day when all of the results became official, where the writs had been returned and the paperwork was done about the Tasmanian election. Now, under their constitution, the person with the most number of seats will be given the first opportunity to form a government. That will be Jeremy Ratcliffe, meaning he will be returned as the Premier. But whether his premiership lasts any longer than a month will all be down to what happens in the Parliament. Will there be another no confidence motion? Will there be another way of trying to change a government without actually having an election to change a government? That looks like exactly what is about to take place in Tasmania. yet again. Now, Jeremy Rockcliffe and I have had our disagreements, but I tell you what, he was as straight as an arrow during this campaign. He was as straight as an arrow, and Labor, who put all of this on, was not rewarded. In fact, their vote went down, one of the worst they have had in a century. The only thing that props them up is the Greens or very left-leaning independents, all of which, just one, throwing the toys out of the cot would mean off to an election again. So, Tassie, I love you. I can't wait to hang out with you. But my goodness, your state politics is very difficult to deal with sometimes.